And I am very excited to welcome our first guest joining us from the across the pond at 1 in the morning her time. She'll do a brief intro and then a pre-recorded version. But we have Janie Meneely, who grew up around her father's boatyard in Annapolis, Maryland, and where she later on worked as a sailmaker. Once the editor of Chesapeake Bay magazine, she became known for her songs and stories about the Bay's people, places, and history. So we're going to jump right into it and welcome Janie this evening. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, or hello from beautiful downtown Whitby on the shores of the North Sea. We're the lobster capital of North Yorkshire. I'm going to do a little song for you. It's on a video pre-recorded. It's the original version of my song, Nasty Nell. I hope you enjoy it.
Bunky, he was waiting for that big old fish to strike, daydreaming about women and the fights on Friday night. He hawked a loogie o'er the side and took another chew as something starts to thrashing, such as feisty fishes do. No sooner Bunky cocks his head, a female form appears. It's Nasty Nell the mermaid, just as sure as Beau is beer. Damn it, Captain, Nellie says, you snaggled my caboose. I'll give you to the count of two to up and cut me loose. Hold on, Sister, Bunky says, I don't believe we've met. Why don't you just thrash until that hook gets good and set? And then I'll haul you up on deck, and won't we have a time? Salty gal such as yourself would probably suit me fine. Now, Nellie ain't no beauty, I forgot to mention that. Tattoos on her biceps and barnacles up her back. Seaweed sprouted from her chest, a scar ran across her gut, and she swore like any blue nose when she got her dander up. It's go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. Bunky starts to chuckle just to see the mermaid spit. Settles in his deck chair just to watch her pitch a fit. Tell me when you're tired, love, he says to Nasty Nell. I don't want you all tuckered when I ring that party bell. Now see here, Nasty Nell pipes up, this isn't any joke. You piss me off and in a flash I'll up and sink your boat. I like a spunky lady, Bunky answers with a grin. And he grabs his fishing tackle and he starts to crank her in. Go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. There, Bunky tells her. There's no need to feel distraught. All's fair in love and fishing, and, well, you're the ones got caught. But Nellie held a mirror up and flashed it from her hand. I got $50, says you ain't setting foot again on land. With that she flipped her scaly tail and jiggled loose that hook. She flipped old Bunk the finger, and without a second look, she dove down deep and swam away without a pretty please. Oh, Bunky felt the water start to swirl around his knees. It's go to hell, says Nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd jump the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay chiggered mitts on me. There's a lesson for the learning, for them's as would be wise. Watch out for them there mermaids, what'll cut you down to size. They are the stuff of legend, such as found in any book. Why, a mermaid, she can sink you with a single dirty look. There's countless songs and stories, though no witnesses survive. They don't appear inclined to leave our sailor boys alive. They'll flash that blasted mirror, and down in the drink you'll drop. Just ask our buddy Bunky next time he washes up. It's go to hell, says nasty Nell, stubbing her cigar. You're nothing but a lily-livered, lousy lump of lard. I'd chomp the bones of Davy Jones or sit on Ahab's knee before I'd let the likes of you lay jiggered mitts on me.
Amazing. Thank you, Janie, for joining us from across the pond. We'll wish you good night since it's late there and continue on with the show. But amazing addition to the gathering this year. Up next, we have Larry Thormalen from Astoria. For those of you who are joining virtually, Astoria, Oregon is the home to the FisherPoets Gathering and has been until we had to go virtual the last year or two. And I'm excited to welcome a local. Larry is the tugboat guy and has been for over 40 years, running up and down the coasts, much of it spent supplying fishing ports like Dutch Harbor and beyond. So I'm going to pass it over to Larry. Thanks for being here.
And I thank you very much. And I'd like to take just a second to thank everybody who's putting this on, because it's just really important to a lot of us who'd like to keep the inertia going so we could eventually get back together and do this live again. That would be great. This little thing I've got for you this evening is about a future fisherman at this time. When the story starts, he's a young man, lives in New Jersey, and he's of Sicilian blood, and he gets through high school, and he decides that he wants to go in the military. He goes in the military. He goes to Germany, does his time in Germany, and comes back, and the family wants him to go in the family business, and he doesn't want to do that. He really kind of think he'd like to be a fisherman. So he puts a pack on his back and hitchhikes across the country. And as the months go by, his hair gets long and his beard gets long, and he looks an awful lot like a hippie when he rolls into Bellingham, Washington, and it's at that time very much a hippie fishing town. And now it's a warm summer evening as he saunters through town with his entire all of his possessions on his back, and he hears a loud bar, and it is a Saturday night, and he's broke and he'd really like to have a beer. So he decides to go into this bar and to see what's going on. And he's always been the guy with the greatest smile in the world. And he goes in and he starts bussing tables and smiling, and wiping things down and taking dishes back to the back. And he does this. The place is jumping. It's Saturday night. It's full of fishermen, as luck would have it. The waitress notices this guy, this stranger that just came in, and starts helping her, and she approves. She approves a lot. Well, he ended up working all through the night until closing time. And he gets his beer, and then he gets a little food, and he got another beer. So things are working out. Things are really looking up for our Sicilian from New Jersey who wants to be a fisherman. Now, though, as luck would have it, the waitress takes him home. Oh, joy, things are really looking up now. He even has a place to be. So as we move along a couple of years down the road, we hear wedding bells. And the waitress and the boy from New Jersey, who's now a fisherman well ensconced in the fishing community, are enjoying their wedding. They're opening presents, and it's just a wonderful evening. And one of the many little things that they get is a card from back in New Jersey. And the bride opens it up and she said, "What's this?" Well, this was a check for a very good month's pay, which really surprised her that something of this size would come in. And she turned to her groom and said, "Is this the Gambinos?" Now the groom, being a fine Sicilian, put his hands out to the side, tipped his head, raised his eyebrows, told his bride, "Roger that." But then he said, but I'm making an honest living now, aren't I? And so he always did for the remainder of his life. The New Jersey boy made an honest living, and it is even so today. And thank you.
Thank you, Larry. An inspiring story as a local Bellingham resident. Yeah, I can picture it happening right downtown. And I am excited to welcome the author of This Side of Sand Island. Victoria Stoppiello is joining us. She is a fisherman's daughter and wrote essays about fins, fish, and fish politics for the Chinook Observer for roughly 20 years. Before I pass the mic, I'll encourage you to check the book out and look for it in your local independent bookseller. And help me welcome Victoria. I know we're on virtual, but I hope folks are clapping and cheering to their computer to help us welcome everyone this evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Elma. Okay, the piece I'm going to read is called Three Keepers. And I'm assuming that most of you know what keepers are. Anybody who fishes, these are ones we keep and those are ones, even sport fishermen get into that. So, three keepers. Bob and his wife, Marie, showed up at our house at the appointed time to review the contents of the box. I bumped into Bob at a flea market. He was buying little fishing plugs, and I looked over his shoulder and commented that I had a box of old wooden plugs from my dad's commercial fishing days and had never figured out what to do with them. Bob had commercial fish too, and now was collecting salmon plugs. I commented that some of my plugs were so large, I doubted there were salmon big enough to come after them anymore. Bob assured me there was still big fish coming up the Columbia, all the way to Kashmir, where he lives. But I know you know, and certainly Bob knows, that the huge fish that used to spawn far up the watershed have been blocked and extinguished by Grand Coulee Dam. I don't know the origins of these plugs, except that they were in a box in my dad's garage workshop after he died. Only 3 plugs had a discernible manufacturer's label. One was a Hansen, signed Mayor Ellefson. Hansen was a fishing lure manufacturer in Edmond, Washington, in the first half of the 20th century, and rarely signed his plugs. Internet plug sales were generally a few dollars to 10 or 12. Or there were stories of much higher prices, so I had no idea what my cash was worth. When Bob and Marie arrived, the plugs were spread on our dining room table, grouped likes with likes. The big ones with no hooks, the little yellow and red ones, the large ones with different colors and corroded treble hooks, the oddballs, including a strange-looking Bakelite shoehorn device with a fixed double hook that Bob said was probably a halibut jig. Some were 7 inches long, some half that size. Almost all were wooden, some with carved and painted eyes, some with eyes of glowing glass, some with a finish so smooth they appeared to never have touched water. But most had a fine white coating that later I realized must have been ancient seawater. There were several tiny, heavy metal fish heads with bright crimson eyes, one with a mini duster of fluorescent feathers flowing behind. Several plugs had been crudely repainted with orange stripes, clearly the work of the same unsteady hand. Bob said fishermen experimented. If plug didn't catch fish, they'd add colors. As we picked up plugs, talked about fishing and my dad, Bob said he had $100 cash, but could write a check. Would 100 do it? I couldn't answer. I stood stock still, thinking. My husband had silently counted. There are 63 plugs, he said. At $3 each, that'd be $180, but some of them could be worthless, and some could be priceless. What are you going to do with them? I wondered aloud. Marie described their fishing bathroom, complete with a toilet seat with hooks, flattened and embedded in rosin. Bob said he'd probably try fishing them. Okay, 150, I said, but I selected the smallest bright-eyed specimen to keep. Then Bob said, you should take this one too. It's a beauty. Holding up a large plug with a luminous aquamarine back, you should keep a few. They were your dad's. Well, I'm attracted to the beaten up ones with the crude painting. Bob said, take the one shaped like a banana. That's unusual. I'd wondered what to do with these old things from my dad's family. I'm the only child of an only child. Bob and I crossed paths, and one of my dilemmas had been solved. I thought this would be a straightforward business transaction. Selling something I didn't need, had been sitting in a box for over 20 years, and had no plans for using. But as the day waned, instead of relief, a feeling of sadness hung about me like a weight on a trolling line. I know I should have let the stuff go, but I have no option. It isn't a simple matter of handing things down to the kids. A childless person is a bit like a dam on a river. Things flow down to you and then stop in a log jam, and it takes effort to force them free. That's it.
Thank you, Victoria. Lovely. Great to hear you. For those of you who are coming in a few minutes late, you are tuned in to the 25th annual FisherPoets Gathering, virtual this year. And my name's Elma, and I'm welcoming next some East Coasters. Mark Allen Lovewell, joined this evening by Molly Conole. Mark is a fisher poet of many years, a longtime storyteller, singer-songwriter, and writer, folk singer from Martha's Vineyard. Mark has been on the water on all sorts of different ships and fishing boats, and I'm going to let him take it away and tell you a little bit more about him through his music. So welcome from Bellingham to Martha's Vineyard, Mark.
So the song I want to sing for you was a song that celebrates the herring fishery. And the lovely lady right next to me is Molly Conole, and you will agree with me. She's a lovely singer and a dear friend. Here we go. Oh, I must say the herring fishery on the East Coast is in trouble. And for those of you who love salmon, we love river herring. They're very similar. They're anadromous fish. They come in the spring and go upstream, and they struggle. They have a hard time, and there's been a moratorium for years. So I hope you love the song. Never was a spring when the herring didn't come. Never a night when the fish did run. Never a thought we'd ever get this way, that they'd be so scarce in this modern day. A humpback whale breaches from a deep dive. A bald eagle flies from so way up high. Shiny silver scales and that old fish weir. You gotta love it, boys. The fish are here. These seaside fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. Fish scales they made Priscilla pearls. Wampanoag, Penobscot, and every coastal tribe. Winters were cold, it was hard to survive. Hope of spring came with this fish of the sea. They came wiggling, swimming up the stream. Scarce they aren't around much anymore. They are so depleted, they're gone from our shore. Don't tell our forefathers we've emptied the banks. We squandered them and have our greed to thank. These seaside fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. Fish scales they made Priscilla pearls. When the shad bush blossoms and the snow melts, the ponds open up and the creeks let out. Wherever a trickle of fresh water meets the sea, there's a herring waiting to come upstream. In the darkest night, when that moon rises, turn that lantern light high, the herring have arrived. Their names connect us to where we should be. Blueback, alewives, bucky, and sawbelly. Last chorus, here we go. These fish were our darlings. We hauled them in the morning for the sun. Fast cold water and our hearts were warm. The ladies, they loved Priscilla pearls. The ladies, they loved Priscilla pearls. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, folks. If you would like to hear that song again, it is on Mary Garvey's compilation, Herring Our Joy. We'll hear from Mary later on in the set. I want to thank you, Mark and Molly, for joining us. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank a few folks that have made the FisherPoets Gathering possible this year and in the past. For one, the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicki Stringfellow for their surprising and very generous support, Oregon Sea Grant, KMUN, and the Tillicum Foundation, and there's many more to come. Many thank yous. Thank you all for being here. If you are looking for ways to support each performer, they're out there. The lineup is below on the YouTube link and on the website. Check out In the Tote and seek out the artist's work and support them if you can. If you have not yet been to a Duncan Berry workshop, I hope you get to go. We'll welcome him this evening for a performance. Duncan hails from the mouth of the Salmon River, where it meets the sea at the center of the Cascade Head UN Biosphere Reserve, UN Biosphere Reserve on Oregon's north central coast. Fished salmon out of the Columbia in the 70s. And like I said, does workshops. The workshops are about making fish art in his home studio, and he's also spending time working on climate-related projects. So thanks for doing the workshop today, Duncan. I hope you get to do many more, and many of the attendees get to join. I'll pass the mic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Elma. Good to be in the FisherPoets community again, something we look forward to all winter, especially in the dark of winter. I'm going to jump right in with a poem called Salmon Walking, which really, in this time of invasions and pandemics, it's nice to know that some of these traditions that we all love continue on, that have been going on for thousands of years. So this is a poem from my time in St. Mary's up the Yukon at our fish buying station. It's called Salmon Walking. These people of the far north, these Yupik, they have been the salmon eaters since the mile-high lenses of clear blue ice melted away, and their salty brethren, the salmon, returned to the rivers, returned to their ancestral waters with their bellies full of oils and flesh colored like dawn. Into their weirs and dip nets and onto their bone hooks they came, filleted to hang in fish houses dressed only in the north wind and smoke. Fuel for the dark days of winter, salmon becoming humans, humans becoming salmon, walking. I grasped the hand of one of these river people boarding his gillnet skiff on the banks of the great river of the Quippac, Yukon, 80 miles from the Bering Sea, 1,900 miles from its headwaters. John Tinker Jr. drifts gillnets through these waters with his 9-year-old son, who introduces himself as Stefan Curry Jr., the three-point guy. We run on the flat, milky waters to Pilot Station, load the net, wait on the sandbar for the opener. Big sky stretching taut from one flat horizon to the other. Eagles split the silence with their keening. Ravens answer with a deep-throated chuckling, knowing that it's all humorous, this life we've been given. Floats and nets flying into the air, stretching at right angles to the current, engine in full reverse, net set, drifting quietly towards the sea. Floats dance as the summer run chum dog keta feel the bite of nylon, swim their last free strokes. We lean backwards, fingers deep in the mesh, pulling hard, and they come over the gunnel, tiger stripe, hook-nosed, empty-bellied, single-minded and intent till the last moment to return to the reds of their mothers and their fathers. How many generations since those first Yupik drove their bows of their bidarkas onto the alluvial bars of this river? How many surging runs of salmon? How many spring floods? How many glaciers spitting gravel and milky water from their mouths? Waves of these first peoples combing these same waters, bones laid flat now in the frozen ground. Through it all has run the red thread of salmon and footsteps of the fisher folk on the banks of the Quippac. Salmon becoming human, humans becoming salmon, walking. So I'm going to just jump into the next one here. I did want to do a shout out to this great publication that's just come out, Jan Small Life. Thank you, Can Beach Arts Association and others. This piece, which I'm dedicating to my sweet wife, Melanie, of 50 years, is called Selkie. And when I was reflecting on Fisher Poets, I was thinking that this is an event really based in love, love of the sea, love of fish, love of our boats, love of each other. And so this is a love poem to someone who's been in my life for 50 years. Again, it's called Selkie. Here, like so many wild shadowed coasts of the north where chill waters are bounded by ancient rock, is the place where the legend of the Selkie was born, of the beautiful dark-eyed feminine seal creature who frequents these shorelines, head just above the surface, eyes darting, quietly watching men and women come and go upon the sea. Once in a lifetime, one of these kind is so drawn to a landsman that she sheds her skin, taking the form of a woman emerging naked and beautiful and dark as the sea itself. And this is a legend I know to be true, for she has found me, this true life Selkie, watching me as I left each day to go out on the broad back of the sea. She who buried her skin after coming ashore, standing upright at my side, and all these many years left it there, hidden high above the tide line, loving her landsman, but never far from the roaring rumble of surf, salt still laced in her hair like some crystalline memory of before. She who goes to the sea to breathe, she who is more of the water than the land, she who is playful and flexible and curious and knowing, she is an embodiment of this wild northern sea itself, running deep, pierced by light, and seductive in the same way that the sea draws us to board our ships for that liquid planet within a planet where we feel more at home than on land itself. And this is how my Selkie is for me, different and mysterious like liquid, both gentle and strong, and I feel more at home in the sanctuary of her than anywhere else in this world. And I strive to be worthy of her and her love knowing that the fluid freedom and comfort of her beloved sea is always calling her, me striving to match this salty sisterhood with the simple and absolute love of a landsman who has been gifted this dark-haired and wild Selkie by the sea. Thank you all, and there she is, my wild Selkie.
Wow. Thank you,
you
Duncan, for
all.
sharing that special love story with us. Congratulations on 50 years. And I want to move on as we have a full schedule this evening. I also need to say that I misspoke, and I wanted to thank Tom and Vicky Springfield for their generous support. I said Stringfellow, so thanks for bearing with my self-correction here. And now I'll welcome another Astoria local. Hobe Kytr is coming from a background as a folklorist, historian, songwriter, and he transitioned from museum work to running a fishery office for the last 14 years of his career. And this is his 25th year with the gathering. So each and every year that we've gathered at the end of February, Hobe's been there, and I'm excited to welcome him back one more time to Fisher Poets. Take it away. Thank you.
Good evening. This is something of a novella encompassed in 4 verses. The setting is a small fishing village on the Lower Columbia River in the Washington Shore in the late 1940s. The cannery had closed, and then word came that the river packet would no longer come delivering the mail. It's called The Last Packet out of Pillar Rock. She caught the last packet out of Pillar Rock. The mailboat doesn't stop there anymore. Moved across the river down to Alderbrook. Got herself a job in the store. Now fishing isn't easy, but it was his life. He thought he shouldn't have to choose between his living and his wife. But she caught the last packet out of Pillar Rock, left him standing on the shore. He'd been a fisherman since childhood, just like his uncle and his dad. And it hardly made a difference that he understood. He never really meant to make her sad. He climbed up to the net loft and started knitting that. Maybe keeping busy would help him to forget. But he'd been a fisherman since childhood. It was the only life it ever had. She was young and kind of pretty. He brought her to a place she'd never known. But she had grown up in the city. She never felt so all alone. It's not she didn't love him, it was just so lonely there. How could she go another night with a heart filled with despair? She was young and kinda pretty. Now she set out on her own. Soon it would be time to hang his gear. Trammels, aprons, back wall on the line. But what strange selvage was it tied him here? All his days were strung with twine. It seemed the rhythm of his life was just a bit too stark She wanted no more lonely nights while he drifted in the dark. Soon it would be time to hang his gear. He knew she'd never change her mind. She caught the last packet out at Pillar Rock, left him standing on the shore. Left him standing on the shore. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've never heard that one, and I want to hear it again, so I'm going to have to dig up a recording or ask you for one, Hobe. Thanks again for being here, folks. We have a first-time Fisher Poets performer up next, so those of you in the chat, let's blow it up and welcome Keith Wilson. Keith is calling in from Hailey, Idaho, but is from Naknek, Alaska. He's been set netting there for salmon in the district, Naknek-Kvichak district, with his family for 26 years. He's an ultra runner, running coach, teacher, and the author of a recently published A Road Out of Naknek. And you can also find him at Wilson's Wild Salmon. Again, he lives in Hailey, Idaho, with his wife and unborn son. So let's see some exclamation points and cheerleading in the chat for a first-time performer. And welcome, Keith.
Thanks. I know everybody's excited to get back to Astoria, but I'm happy to be joining for the first time. I'll be reading a short excerpt from my book, from a story that took place about 10 years ago. It's from set netting the Kvichak, and I was set netting the Kvichak 10 years before that. I'll probably be set netting the Kvichak 10 years from now. This was a night where we caught over 20,000 pounds of fish, and we were down to the last 6,000 pounds on board, plus the nets. So we were as low in the water as it gets. Fortunately, it was dead calm that night. Then we got to the tender, and they were full. So we had to wait for a new tender, which wasn't going to come for another several hours. And as we waited, the weather came in, the waves got bigger, and where I'll start reading is where we were starting to offload our fish. There is a siren on the other side of the vessel. I hear it over the wind and waves and men shouting. My brother freezes. The crane operator disappears. The attention of the crew is on the skiff on the other side of the tender, where 2 men have gone overboard. Our skiff remains lopsided. It rocks and splashes in the waves, and splashes into the stern are bigger now. Hey, Dad yells up to anyone who can hear. We got to get more fish out of here or we're going to swamp too. The scale from the crane is still lowered into our skiff, and I start clipping the next brailer to it. My brother is frozen. Luke, I say, brailer, come on. I can't hear what Dad and the skipper are shouting back and forth through the wind, but Dad starts untying the stern line. Keith, he shouts, untie. Skipper says we're going into calmer water. I release us. The water dumps into the stern. Hey, we're sinking, Dad yells. We're sinking. Fish float toward me. The motor is underwater. I've untied, but the line is still in my hands, sliding through them. I tighten my grip and I feel it burn through my gloves. I'm bailing, Luke says. I know he doesn't mean the bucket when he crawls to the side and climbs aboard the tender. Metal crashes against metal, splashes between vessels tower above me. Waves keep dumping into the skiff. My hands burn as they tighten harder around the line as I slip into the dark. In my peripheral vision, I see Dad climb aboard the tender too. I'm alone in the skiff, drifting away, fish floating against my hips. Dad and Luke's voices are somewhere in the lights. Luke says, "Screw the skiff, Keith, get up here." Dad says, "Damn it, that's my son." I keep drifting into the darkness, and for a moment, the waves are silent, almost still. My mind must have gone black. I don't remember tying the tangle into the net, into the mess on the floor, holding the skiff against the current. But I look down, and it's there. It's not a bowline or a keg knot, even a granny knot. It's a wad of line woven back and forth and around itself in some kind of mess that's somehow holding. I've done what I can, and now I need to get out of the skiff. I step toward the tender, but my ankle is wrapped in the line. My face splashes into the floor. I taste salt. Water pours down my neck. The bail bucket floats by me and disappears. I flap and kick, but it's futile. The more I move, the more the line tightens. Water keeps pouring toward me. Water is all I see. Now I realize, surrounded in the dark, that I've come face to face with the tide. A road out of Naknek, Alaskan salmon fishing, long distance running, and life according to the tide. Thank you.
Wow. Keith, welcome to Fisher Poets. Doing
Thanks,
it
I
right.
appreciate that.
As a fellow set netter, I have major heebie-jeebies listening, and I'm glad to see that you're here with us this evening and made it through that experience. So look forward
Spoilers.
to reading the book. And thanks again. Whew. I gotta relax after being stressed for Keith. Okay, I want to include a few thank yous. Again, the Oregon Community Foundation's Patricia Friedland Fund has been a longtime supporter of the gathering, and we're grateful again this year for their support. And Carol Brill and Douglas Booth also bringing us support this year for the 25th annual. So thank you so much to them. Next, I want to welcome my friend and fisher poet, Kat Murphy. Kat's calling in from Port Townsend, Washington. She owns and operates the beautiful FV Grace, a power trawler in Southeast Alaska, as well as her own direct marketing business called Catfish Salmon Co., where you can buy delicious cans and more lovely, fresh, well-treated salmon. So thanks, Kat, for returning to read with us. We're excited to hear you.
Thanks, Elma. This piece is called Two Homes, Two Hearts. How do you put into words what should only be felt? There's a flower drifting past the boat in the middle of this deep blue sea. It makes me think of home and of blackberry season, lettuce shooting out of the ground, peas weaving their vines, and nasturtiums overflowing. I look out on deck and see waves and whitecaps and foam, lines shaking with fish ready to be caught. I am alone in a world of sea and sky. This is also home. For me, Alaska is sunrises and sunsets blurring together into one endless day stretched out. Expansive and overwhelming, Alaska is too big to contain, ever overflowing, raw and unfiltered. It is well-organized chaos. It holds the wild places that I love. Port Townsend is the steady plodding of time, the rhythms of day-to-day living, the clock ticking and me knowing what day of the week it is. It holds the long dark hours and the deep sleep. It is peaceful and methodical and sometimes hard to stuff myself back into. It holds the people that I love frozen in time. After 4 months away, I struggle trying to find the words to describe all that a summer fishing season holds. So I put on the hat of entertainer, vivacious storyteller, performer of tricks and jokes. I tell the people what they want to hear. I make them laugh and sometimes cringe. Fascinated, captivated, I hold them in the palm of my hand. I am powerful. I am in control. But they make room for me, create space for the transformation from fisherman to cat. Graciously accepting whatever form of me happens to appear in September, lovingly breaking the tension of transition, they listen and laugh, politely applauding at the end of my performance. They wait patiently. Translating my summers and trying to understand theirs feels like a full cup of water that I knock over and spill onto the floor. The words seep into the carpet. I am one person and two people. The distance between is becoming too vast to bridge. I can hear the waves slapping against the hull as I drive the Grace forward. I try and go forward with the water as a sea of flowers floating. Looking down, I run my hands through their petals, but they're chanterelles, smooth and bright on the fall forest floor. I sense movement and look up. The troll poles are shaking with fish, but it's my teeth chattering. My body shaking with cold as I sit on my surfboard staring out at the waves as the snow falls around me, melting into the sea. Another wave, this time crashing over the bow. It's the Omni Rip. I'm caught. I need to turn around. I need to go back, but I can't get through. The petals are too thick. I've lost all control over the situation. The raven on the bow says two, and I yell back one. My voice becomes snow, becomes blackberries, wraps like river rock around ego and self. The raven says harmony. Let me begin again. How do you put into words what can only be felt? There's a flower drifting past the boat in the middle of this deep blue sea. The memories start to trickle like water over smooth stones, told out of order as they are felt rather than remembered. Listening to a favorite song in the deep peace of the morning run out of the anchorage, running day and night nonstop, trying to get the boat south before the gale, a bright moon on a still ocean lighting the way. One breakdown after another. I'm covered in soot in my engine room, exasperated. A buddy hands me a cold beer afterwards. No words, just understanding. The best day of fishing I've ever had, and the boat refusing to turn over the next morning. Collecting beach asparagus under a rare bright sun and a piercing blue sky, hot sand, sunburn. We are 8 days in, 700 miles traveled, and a football field's distance from home. Anchored outside the breakwater, waiting for the wind to come down as the clock strikes midnight. The metallic, manic smell of king salmon on deck, the smell of money. Their silver scales sparkling on my town jeans. How did those get there? Tequila shots with the unofficial mayor of Shearwater. Did that actually happen? Rafting up to a friend's boat in the dark that I haven't seen all season. The warm light of my sodium illuminating their smiling faces as they catch my lines. Serenity, fatigue, anxiety, fear, joy, grief, perseverance, desperation, love, loss, anger, peace, awe, trickling over smooth stones, down the river, out to sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks so much for sharing. Yay, cheerleaders! Happy to see you there. I hope folks, we really look forward to gathering all together next year, hopefully, in the streets of Astoria. This next performer tells me that there's no place they'd rather be this time of year than at the FisherPoets Gathering, virtual or not. And I'm excited to welcome Larry Kaplan, a fellow from the Nutmeg State of Connecticut. Larry is joining us from Essex, recently returned from the UK, and his poignant songs of the maritime and fishing trade are known, loved, and sung widely. And I'm going to let him give us a taste himself this evening with his beautiful music. So thanks so much. Here you go, Larry.
Thanks, Elma. It's really good to be back at FisherPoets. This is my 6th year, and hope many more others. In 1859, on the Irish Sea, 800 lives were lost, 133 ships were lost during the Royal Charter Gale, which was one of the most devastating gales of its time. And that prompted Robert Fitzroy, Captain Robert Fitzroy, to start thinking about ways to warn mariners of impending storms. Fitzroy is best known for being the captain of the Beagle, Darwin's vessel, but his life was really dedicated to improving conditions and safety on the seas around England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. He was a prolific inventor as well. And that led to what became what is now known as a shipping forecast, which on the BBC radio you'll hear 4 times a day, which gives you information on about 31 sectors around those waters. And it really is probably the oldest organized weather forecast system in the world. This is my attempt to familiarize others with the different names of those sectors. I don't expect to ever learn this myself, so I have the lyrics in front of me. It's called the Shipping Forecast. Plymouth, Portland, Dover, White, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bight, Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey, Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Vikings, Seoul for miles, Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's line, both the Atchires, then to time, Trafalgar, Hebrides, call out, you sailing ships now come about, Val and Rockle, 40 shout, please turn around and ne'er go out. Well, the shipping forecast tells you well of fairest breeze or deadly swell, the southern winds or Arctic cold, from waters deep to breaking shoals. Plymouth, Portland, Dover, Wide, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bight. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. Well, you must learn the Beaufort scale to tell fresh breeze from the bloody gale. For what begins as a gentle breeze may soon bring boatmen to their knees. Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. Those Viking waves are cold and steep at 60 north and 4 knot east. But should you dare lay down to sleep, you'll wake to swells near 70 feet. Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Vikings, Seoul for miles. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. If the veering winds bring a gentle breeze, they'll back again and stir the sea. Too far from land, you best dare not, cyclonic gales are 80 knots. Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's line, both the Atchires then to Tyne. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. I've never seen the Devil's Hole, there east of Dundee, far below. Deep trenches hide the seabed floor, where vessels fall, then arise no more. Mail and Rockle, 40 shout, Trafalgar, Hebrides, then out. These names were given to our seas, so mariners know where they be. So the forecast tells us well of goodly breeze or deadly swell. And while this still sounds strange to me, wise sailors know why it must be. Plymouth, Portland, Dover, Wide, Fastnet, Lundy, German Bight, Thames and Humber, Cromarty, Forth and Dogger, then Bailey, Southeast Iceland, next Fair Isle, Faroes, Vikings, Seoul for miles. Biscay, Fisher, Fitzroy's line, both the Atchires then to Tyne. Trafalgar, Hebrides, call out, you sailing ships now come about. Mal and Rockle, 40 shout, please turn around and ne'er go out.
Beautiful, Larry. Thank you so much for coming back yet again and sharing with us. We love hearing that and appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
I want to celebrate this beautiful flower that's blooming behind me from a little bulb that my mom sent me about a month ago. Look at that. And I want to welcome another Connecticut, original Connecticut reader. Dano Quinn is up next. Although never actually having worked as a commercial fisherman, Dano is a 40-year career mariner who snuck into the gathering under the radar in 2006 and has stuck with us since then. Dano emceed earlier this evening. I want to thank him for that and pass the mic.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, Elma, I was going to start by thanking you for doing MC work, and also Amanda for making this all run so smoothly, and for everybody in the background that we're not seeing here, but that has worked so hard to get us all together for this special evening here in chilly February weekend. So if you know my work, you know that a 5-minute timeline is kind of tough for me because most of my stories tend to ramble on a little bit longer than that. But I've got a shorter one here. It's about the earlier days of my seagoing career when I was working on big sailing ships. And what I knew when I started writing this was that I wanted to describe the sea state and conditions as they built up in a storm. This one's called For Better or Worse. We was 3 days out of Boston when the wind began to freshen. I was the rookie second mate, and to make a good impression, I nipped down to the captain's door and gave it a couple of raps. The breeze should be piping up, sir. Time to throw in a reef, perhaps? Nah, says he from behind the door in a tone that was clipped and terse. Let her run. She loves a snorter. Call me if it gets any worse. Well, get worse it did. The swells piled up. The breeze grew into a bluster. We all climbed into our oilskins as white horses began to muster. I jumped down the ladder. I knocked again at Captain's door. Said, sir, she's getting rougher. It's hard to hold a steady course. We're really starting to suffer. Hand your topsails and outer jibs, quips he as if reading a verse. Throw a deep reef in the mainsail. Call if it gets any worse. Well, we sweated hard, got her done, but that breeze just kept on making. A squall swept in and laid us down. The growlers started breaking. I jumps down the ladder again and dispensed with the cheerful greeting. Cap, I hollers at that varnished door. We're taking an awful beating. Go ahead and strike the foresail, he rumbles with a muttered curse. Set up your lifelines fore and aft. We'll call if it gets any worse. Before long, she's pumping force 8. The spindrifts commencing to streak. An icy spray was soaking us down, and the wind was a steady shriek. Sir, shouts I, she's a fresh gale now. We're still holding too much sail. The sea's a boiling fury, and we're soaking the lee pin rail. A gale, you say? Too much sail? Better watch she don't take a header. Re-rig with main trysail and storm jib, and call me when it gets better.
I feel like there's more of a story there that I hope to hear completely for one day. And I want to welcome next Mary Garvey. Thank you, Dano. Mary grew up on the Columbia River and has been familiar adjacently to the maritime culture all her life. Now a dedicated songwriter, Mary's songs tell tradition and new tales, a lot of them influenced from her time in Newfoundland. And I'm going to welcome Mary. I think she's going to sing for us, so I'm excited to have her.
Thank you. I'll sing the shrimp boat Lulubelle, and it's about the latest hurricane down in Louisiana. So this stuff is so universal, is it not? Okay. My pappy said, my son, your name is Lafayette. There hasn't been a hurricane that's compromised us yet. So grab some Cajun courage and pull your gumboots on. Anything we have today, tomorrow may be gone. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Once I had a shrimp boat, her name was Micheline. Now I see her in the mud, all smashed to smithereens. She used to be a beauty, but now she is a wreck. She's nothing left but broken glass and splinters for a deck. And once I had a partner, his name was Jimmy Brown. He said, I just can't get no more, I'll get a job in town. I'll camp out in the bayou and live on rice and beans. I'll take whatever you can catch and sell in New Orleans. Here's to you and to me, to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me and to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. But still I have another boat, her name is Lulu Bell. Right now she is an eyesore, her engine still works well. With patchwork and a bit of paint, she'll soon be good as new. And she and I will show you all what Cajun pluck can do. Trouble makes the world go round and then go round some more. Maybe I'll be rich again, or maybe I'll be poor, but I'll stomp in my old gumboots and salvage what I can. I'll live and die as I was born, a son of Louisiana. Here's to you and to me, to all us Cajun men. And if you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Here's to you and to me, to all us Cajun men. If you knock us down, you'll see us bounce back up again. Thanks, and you recognize the tune, it's traditional.
Thank you so much, Mary. Love a song of resilience in these hard times we're all having. So thanks for inspiring us all to get back up. And we're going to move right along here. I'm excited to welcome my neighbor to the north, Kathy Stack, calling in from Saltspring Island, BC. Kathy worked on a tender during herring and salmon for over 30 years, traveling the coast of BC and up into southeast Alaska. And I think we're going to hear some music. Is that right, Kathy?
That's right.
Okay, I'll pass it to you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'd like to sing you a song about Ripple Rock, which was a ship-killing menace in the middle of Seymour Narrows before 1958. And I've been through there hundreds of times through Seymour Narrows at all stages of the tide, and it's really nasty when the tide's running. Whirlpools and overfalls galore, and I can't imagine what it was like with a rock in the middle. So I'm so grateful to the fellows who blew it up. They took 3 years with 2 shifts of miners working day and night to tunnel down through the island, under the channel, and up into the rock, and then fill it with dynamite. So this is for them. Every time I go through Seymour Narrows, take my hat off to those dynamite men who risk their lives to make it safe to travel for sailors and fishermen. Like Lorelei, it lurked beneath the water. It tore the bellies from 100 ships. It swallowed more than 100 sailors among the whirlpools and the tidal rips. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. Folks in Campbell River felt the shock. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. For 1,000 nights and 1,000 dark days, miners blasted their weary way. They tunneled down through Maud Island, under the channel where the Twin Peaks lay. They filled Old Rip with high explosive, with just one chance to blow it away. They waited till the tide was racing and held their breath on that April day. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. Folks in Campbell River felt the shock. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. With a mighty roar, the rock erupted, shooting pieces a mile in the air. We all cheered the grinning miners. That menace is no longer there. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. Folk in Campbell River felt the shock, 'cause they blew the top off a Ripple Rock. They blew the top, they blew the top, they blew the top off a Ripple, Ripple, Ripple. They blew the top off a Ripple Rock. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you live next year in Astoria. Thank you, Amanda and Jamie and Elma.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that chorus is going to be, I'm going to be singing it in my head tomorrow, and I really appreciate that. I look forward to hearing it again in person.
Great. Me too.
And Peter Munro is a recently retired fisheries biologist and remains an actively practicing poet at open mics around the area. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Elma, and thank you to all the organizers, and especially thank you, all you listeners, for your precious attention. This piece is just one poem. It's called "In the Office of Ballard Oil, Drinking Coffee with the Old Timers." Back in the king crab heyday, any fool could fill a boat. That's how they talked down to the oil docks, those old school Norwegians, jawing as they hawked up stories by the coffee urn, tales tooled to run more smoothly than diesels. They idled their lies in Norsk, sagas fueled by weather hammering vessels, 80-knot winds driving 30-foot peelers. The taller the wave, the tougher the sailor. In my off season, I'd steam down and heave too among those crabby bastards. Retirement and age had rendered them peeved. Moored to folding chairs, they'd mustered to grumble how modern fishing aggrieved them. Iron men, wooden boats, and myth, the usual bullshit. Not hard to believe if you swill truths bottled in fifths. Industrial crab slaughter north of False Pass. Translations from Norsky blown up my ass. Now run aground in Northwest Seattle. They built epics out of their lies, rivalries revisited, old battles rejoined, and old losses revised. Not one word how an akavit bottle put the Solvig J on the rocks. Launched just after the divorce, she'd settled on her side, awash, Ballard locks still in sight, steel skin torn for a flooding tide, and Solvig's ex-husband with no place to hide. My scalds nobbled mugs of heat, their knuckles worked thick with arthritis and cold, histories written in roughly buckled fingers and in scars where skin folds had been bitten by steel when a shackle failed or rebar busted. My bards recited their scolds, shacked, block, and tackle, low quota, rust chipped in shipyards. Broggy Bodison hove up. He heeled to starboard across the office, then chewed on the coffee he'd poured. Snorri stirless and through lines and hobbled after Bodison. His new hip, socket, and ball still gave him some trouble. Nothing the right wrench wouldn't whip, and nothing like a standard day fabled from the Bering Sea. Ragnar dragged on a cigarette, exhaled, quibble. Nobody grinds bait that way. Brags ebbed and flowed, stately as tides. Tobacco smoke flavored silences after each sailor spoke. Down sounding their dark and myth-charted grounds, the coffee urn ticked. No sonar pinged so elegantly, nor pierced those drowned domains where smelters melt kroner, where trolls hammer anvils, and where silver-crowned fish speak Old Norse. A new story rumbled to life. Pistons revved up to pound, throttles opened wide to glory, and 7 shots of buoy line coiled by hand. Vertebrae wrecked, a sailor lost on land. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for being here. I heard that you're representing a harbor that some say is Fraserburgh behind you. So looking good.
Oh, that George Wilson's probably watching.
Correct. Excellent. I am going to go ahead and try Dave Densmore one more time.
This first one I'm going to read, I was sitting around this winter and thinking about being on the boat and so on. And I got to thinking about how it doesn't matter what you fish, where you fish, or any of that. Fisherman, a real fisherman gets a real affinity for his boat. So I kind of wrote a little love poem to it called Another Day. Her old engine rumbles to life. Oil, water, fluids, all been checked. Then up the ladder, back to the galley, out on the well-worn deck. Wheelhouse, my true comfort zone. Readied, depth sounder and radar softly glow. Running lights on, signal my intent. VHF, channel 16, turn down low. Maybe pause for one more cup of coffee while the engine comes up to heat. Lean against the counter, cup in hand, feeling the engine's soothing beat. Finally out on deck, moving past, make loose the tie-up lines, free in boat and sail from land, and all that there ever binds. Back in the wheelhouse, ease into reverse, and gently back her out of the stall. Spin the wheel, play clutch and throttle. Another round is about to fall. As we slip out the bay, can't help but smile at the gentle rise and fall of swell. Engine rumble, stove's warmth, hot coffee and cup, all in my world as well. Glancing at the radar's glow, occasional spray from the sidelight shine. The throb, the motion, the sounds and smells. This sum of my life suits just fine. Sometimes I just have to caress the bright work and the worn spots on the wheel. Simply shut the autopilot off, steer by hand. So complete connection with her I can feel. I love the throbbing power beneath my feet and the oneness with a trusted boat that surrounds. Engine, natural boat sounds, or clink of galley crockery. All seems a love song in every sound. Hell, I don't seek to romanticize this life. It's hard and costly, it's true. But one thing I understand, lucky is a man who loves what he chose. Baiting hooks or setting pots, whatever the season's brought to hand. So alone, I'm never lonely out here, the way I always am on land. Near shore or far out at sea, working alone or with a crew. Fair weather or foul, I'm proud to be one of the chosen few. That wasn't a more quick one to read. I've been asked lots of times, how do you write those poems? Where do they come from? I have no idea where they come from. I try to buy expensive pens because that maybe I get a little better quality poem on them. But I wrote this to kind of explain the whole thing. It's called Fish and Poems. The run's coming strong. Once again, our hole is getting full. As I watch for fish, lay out the net, I suddenly feel pen and paper full. I'm too busy, don't have time right now to scratch out another poem. I'll have to wait till season's end when I'm idling around at home. So I call my skiff man on the radio to adjust his end of the net. Now the boat's tight to the beach, but this'll be a damn good set. The engine purrs and net's holding right. It just doesn't get any better than this. But those rhyming words continue to dance as I watch oncoming fish. Those rhyming words keep nagging me till I go fetch my paper and pen as I watch fish and net with knee balance pad. Another poem from my pen begins. So there I am on that flying bridge, trying to fish and still capture a rhyming line. Cursed or blessed, I can't really tell. But I do love this life of mine. Well, that's the way it goes. Everything is going right. But sometimes they come amidst raging storm or even darkest night. Well, that's the way it goes. Oh, no. Yep, it's maybe rough and windy. The weak fish run not even showing. When words will come I have to catch, they'll be forever lost, and they're going. That damn boat may be bucking and rolling, hard running currents trying to change my set shape. Hell, sometimes it's a challenge just to stick and stay when fishing out there on those capes. Driving rain and spray run off my rain gear. Feels like I'm standing under a fire hose. Even my eyebrows seem to droop as water runs off my beard and nose. And you guessed it, wind and rain. That's when a poem will start to call. Hard to write on soggy paper, and glasses are no damn good at all. What would I change about this life? Well, aside from the inevitable arrival of fall, marking the end of my fishing season, not one single damn thing at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Great to hear you. Longtime Fisher Poet. For those of you who haven't been to FisherPoets.org, I welcome you to visit after tonight's readings for more material and features from In the Tote, which is a compilation of those who have performed for a long time. And before we move on to Geno, I'm going to just carry on with my thank yous. I want to make sure we mention the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through it, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund specifically. And I want to thank very much all of those who have emceed so far and will after this set, and Amanda and Jamie who are helping us behind the scenes here. And someone else who has been a big part of the Fisher Poets Gathering behind the scenes was Mick Hassan, who was our in-person sound tech for many years and passed recently, sadly. So I just wanted to bring his name up this evening as we honor him, even though we are virtual this year. And we'll miss him sorely whenever we get to be back in person, and his skills that he brought to the festival. So want to thank Mick for all his hard work contributing, and may he rest in peace. Okay, up next, I'm welcoming Geno Leech. Geno's joining us, I think, from the Broderick living room here, but coming from between Cape Disappointment and Dismal Niche in Chinook, Washington. He's a longtime Fisher poet, working, I think, in the Columbia out of Astoria, but we'll see what he shares with us this evening. So thank you, Geno. Passing the mic to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this poem here is called Herring Scales, and I wrote this for Smitty Smith. Harrison Smitty Smith was one of the Hall of Famers that passed on a few years ago from Fisher Poets. He was down in Arizona. He got wiped out on a motorcycle, and I heard about that. I think he was in a body cast or something in Tucson, but I figured he needed a laugh, so I composed this poem called Herring Scales. It looks back at one of my seasons in Togiak, and I don't know, the rest is history. So here we go, Herring Scales. Well, they're clinging to the cross trees, plastered to the mast, splattered on the flying bridge and bacon on the stack. Air bowled on the bulwarks, caked around the rail. We're bucking back to Knack-Knack, festooned with herring scales. Well, this season was a bust, kept our losing streak intact. Yeah, our record's 0-20 up there in Togiak. Well, if the Japanese eat herring roe and the French escargot snails, how come there ain't a gourmet market for old herring scales? Well, I'm closer to those herring scales and to my next of kin. Those dime-sized, transparent blisters are glued right to my skin. They're whole bone on my backside, hitchhiking in my socks, flying first class on my earlobes, sailing steerage in my crotch. Well, I paid off in rope yarns, flew back from King Salmon, had a romantic coming home night, bottle of Bordeaux, a bubble bath, love songs by Barry White. Well, I failed to use precaution. A peculiar strain of STD prevailed. I gave my loving wife a dose of Togiak herring scales. Well, my life already sucked, but it went from bad to worse. I even considered throwing in with a Holy Roller Church. I was mounting the pumps on my sinking existence and asking myself, why me? And all the while, trouble was brewing in the deep, dark south of my anatomy. Well, bold black letters proclaimed, proctologist on the chicken-wired frosted glass. 2 seconds later, I was bent over a chair. Had a programmed up my ass. Well, old Doc was about as gentle as a Dutch Harbor pile block, but he really knew the score. He reared back in his flask and simply asked, "You ever fish herring in Togiak before?" Well, my wife took off and left me. My life's done hit the rocks. Yeah, I'm living underneath the bridge in a double wide appliance box. I stare out at the shipping channel and think how life ain't fair cause. If herring scales were pennies, I'd be a billionaire. Thank you and God bless. Great to see all y'all. Okay.
Thank you, Geno. What a way to get rich off herring scales. I think that I am up next. Pretty sure, yeah. My name's Elma. I've been the MC, but I've also joining with a little set of my own here. I've been a Bristol-based set netter for the last 10 years or so, and letter writing has been a big part of my off-the-grid fishing summer since I started, and many of them get written only in my head because our hands are so busy all the time. And I decided to put a few to paper here in the off season, so I'm just going to read a couple of those this evening that I wish I had written in season. Dear Mo, how sweet to know that you're here in the Bay. I hope it welcomes you as it did me years ago now. I know you are in great hands with Melanie, Billy, Celeste, but I also wish we could host you here in Ugashik. Ugashik is so forgotten. Sometimes I feel like we hardly have a biologist. It is kind of nice, in a way. No one expects much from us, especially us set netters. The fish have not come, but I know they will. XX. Dear Lily, I think we could all serve to talk about more than the weather. It's so easy, this topic, of course. We have been training our whole lives to focus on this integral chatter, both in line at the grocery store, on the phone with our dads, and now, for me, at the galley table, on deck, or even more so, in the lines of every industry publication, of which there are, shockingly, many. It's important, of course, the weather. I mean, it's important to us because it tells us what we can and can't do, what we will and won't catch, when we'll make a run or not. But remarkably, it's even an important topic to someone who doesn't leave their house to work or even to play. Anyway, it's universal, you know what I mean? We all sleep, wake, eat, cry, laugh, call our friends, and flirt with our friends under the same sky. Time zones, geography aside, you know what I mean. I think this is nice, given the widening divides in every other corner of society. In that way, I suppose, saying absolutely nothing while blabbering on about the weather is nice. It's nice to know that we share something, at least. But good God, doesn't anyone have anything else to say? I'm open to good questions if you're willing to share. Let me know what you're asking folks at the cafe, what they are saying back. Bon appetit. Dear Dad, I have never seen so many fish in my life. I know my life is short compared to all the salty old-timers out here, but even they are saying that. I don't think, overall, it's more fish than any of these previous good years, but they are coming in differently. The normally muddy, ugly brown, brackish river is shining with jumpers and little dollops of that beautiful scale shine. It feels like they are rushing, the fish. I am worried they are rushing to get upriver during these cooler days so they don't end up in an overheated, shallow riverbed like a few years ago when so many died. I wonder if these are the 2- and 3-year fish that were reds and fried during that year. I can't help but think it's us that's making them rush. Us humans and our trucks and capitalism-fueled steamships and space alien CEOs going to Mars. I am sad, wondering if rushing is new to the salmon. If one day they just moseyed upriver once at a time, sometime between May and October. Just some things I'm thinking about. It really is spectacular to see. Are you off rushing somewhere? How is the weather? Love you. Dear Maggie, am I missing the berries? That's my biggest worry. Well, really, my biggest worry is if a greenhorn will get their foot in a line and go overboard with the net, or if the skiffs out front will drag anchor while I sleep and write to you, or if the funny noise coming from the outboard is a human-made problem or just happens to a 10-year-old outboard. I guess these are the anxieties pumping up my adrenals with air, but they are giving me the energy to stay up and write to you after a long tide. That's good, right? How absurd that I choose to live in the berry capital of the world and then choose to leave when they're in season. Then again, how absurd that I'm here participating in the world's last great wild salmon run and harvest, only to be worried about missing another phenomena someplace else. I hope you are out there in the valley getting buckets full. I'll be home soon, ready to trade berries for fish. We all miss you. Thanks. That was my letter set this evening. And I'm excited to welcome Sierra Golden. Sierra is a former Southeast Seine deckhand who dreams of a Bristol Bay set net site. She's currently got a desk job in the Methow Valley where she lives with her partner and young son. Sierra has a compilation of poems and writings that I encourage everyone to check out as well. That's a staple on my shelf. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Sierra.
Thanks, Elma. I loved those letters. I'm gonna quickly read 3 poems. The first one is called Leftovers, and yeah. In the red rust of morning, a salmon fisherman mends his seine, hardening his hands stitch by stitch. In the galley, the cook scrambles eggs, tosses the shells to a rising tide. A circling hummingbird touches its slender beak to the trash. The skipper's kids hide and seek behind a stack of crab pots, and the shipwright urges boat work, new caulking with pine-soaked oakum. A wet mop slops across the sky, and the rain begins again. At dinner time, the harbor master meets a boat by the crooked pier, she and the evergreen trees dripping in the gathering dark, while her family says grace around a yellow cedar table with their eyes closed. I want to say thank you to the organizers and the MCs and everyone watching. It's really wonderful to be back here, and I look forward to, like everyone, hopefully next year in person. The second poem, I wrote the first draft of it at a FisherPoets Gathering in Astoria in a workshop with Joseph Millar. And the other good thing to know about this poem is that it's inspired in part by Hollis Jennings, who is a skipper in Southeast. And she once said to me, one of the best things about fishing is not fishing. And this poem is called Not Fishing. I don't want to know the way snow dissolves, falling into salt water, the way solstice light begins to creep back into mornings on watch, the way hands cramp baiting hooks one after another, while stars shine like spilt salt on the black bread of night. I don't want to know the VHF sputtering sweet nothings on Valentine's Day, though I do know the small stones I carry in my heart. I don't want to know the weight of a winter king, his body thrashing on the side of the boat, streaming bloody water and wrath, his black mouth yawning with want, yellow eyes wide as a child's. I never want to leave home in winter to fish. I want to trade the ocean for a cup of tea, an arm around my waist, the small mercies of home. And I'll read one more really quick poem. It's brand new. I'm reading it out of my journal. And I wrote it after I took my son to visit my parents, and he took his first trip down to my dad's seiner, which is the boat that I crewed on for 8 summers. And so this is called, for now, Seasons, or Haiku for My Father, February 21st, 2022. Northeasterly, cold as the skipper's hair is white, grandson's hands on the wheel. Thank you guys. See you next year.
Awesome, Sierra. I must admit, I have the Not Fishing poem on my bathroom wall. And I know that top house. It's so fun to imagine the next generation in it. Thanks so much for being here. And we are closing out the first set here with Philip Randolph Patton here. He has one long disastrous season chasing herring in Norton Sound under his belt, as well as a few seasons in a Seattle boatyard, a couple seining in Southeast, and a bit of seining in a desert, which I'm not totally clear on, but I look forward to hearing about one day. He lives in West Seattle, and he's busy working on some books on the amusingly convoluted history of theoretical aerodynamics. I don't think that's what we're going to be hearing about this evening.
No, you do not want it.
Excited to pass the mic to you, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Elma, and the organizers and the audience. And it is just an honor to be with so many great performers, great stories and poems. This is seining for carp in the desert. Seining for carp in a desert? Surely you're joking, Mr. Phillip. Probably the most preposterous assertion of a commercial fishing location imaginable, huh? Nah, dead serious. My first fishing job, real fish, carp. with scales. Trust me, the reality isn't as fun as the title. Besides, it was an irrigated desert. Well, it was along about 1970. I was 21. I found that even Gentiles could work on an Israeli kibbutz, all romanticized by Jewish friends. A destination. I just wanted to go somewhere else, to get the hell out of, well, Seattle. 5 months hitching in Europe, 7 in captured Palestine. Little seine nets everywhere these days, like Putin's, pulling in more, well, land, plus the native species. God, I met a 14-year-old carp in East Jerusalem who invited me to his octagonal Moorish home for lunch. He had to explain to oblivious young idiot me, we don't like to be occupied. A Jewish kid and I wandered through the captured, evacuated Golan Heights town of Kytr, little orchards with plums, apples, pomegranates, grapes, in front and back of each tiny, emptied, concrete peasant house, each still holding a feeling. These people loved to live here. These people loved to live here. Oh yeah, fishing. 5 months on a kibbutz in northern Israel. They had 13 carp ponds, about the size of football fields. Each had 2 sizes of carp, 'cause little and big occupied different ecological niches and got along okay, unlike the peoples of these lands. They wanted me to kill turtles, big things, that, like the Palestinians, were indigenous, because they ate the fish as food, the turtles, not the Palestinians. Hell, the kibbutzniks wouldn't even eat the carp, let alone their fish food. Nasty bony things, the carp, not the kibbutzniks or the Palestinians. After I smashed one shell with a rock, a turtle, not a Palestinian, and it crawled away, God, after that I'd just throw them in the drainage ditch. The turtles, not the Palestinians. Well, there was that time when the guys yelled at me to kill a Palestinian viper. That's a snake. It was big. I beat it with a 2-inch thick steel pole. They all laughed. Some harmless species. It was probably a reincarnated seiner catching little carp that did eat fish food. But the ponds and fishing. We'd drain them low, run a small seine around the lowest part, and scoop the carp into a bucket escalator up to a bubbleator truck. The bigger ones driven off to be turned into gefilte fish, a delicacy about as appealing as haggis. The little ones recycled into ponds with even littler ones to grow up, to be caught and shipped. See, the actuality wasn't as improbable as the title, Seining for Carp in the Desert. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And 2 good ones. Good to learn that you can seine in a desert. Okay, everyone, we are at the end of our first set here on Saturday night. We will take a short intermission and be back right here at 8 o'clock with another set of amazing Fisher Poets until a little bit later this evening. If you missed last night's set or our celebration of our dear friend and Fisher poet John Campbell, both of those are saved and will be, all of our live streams from the weekend will be available in the future via the YouTube channel. So thanks everyone for being here. Take a break, walk around the block, eat some food, and we'll be back. Be safe. Thank you.